Alright, so hello and welcome. Today we're going to go over the top 10 first level spells in D&D in my opinion. Imagine. Okay, so not everyone scream at once. So I'll scream together in the comment section for once and scream how bad I am. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And these are just in my opinion, again, for saying it again, and they're first levels. Alright, so without further ado, today's video sponsor is myself. Are you a dungeon master that has been frustrated by D&D mass combat rules? Well, worry no longer. I have a solution for you DMs. The Squad Combat module lets you run mass combat quickly, with massive customization options. Do you like additional D&D supplements that improve the immersion and realism of your games? Want maps for your D&D adventures? Reduce your prep time, improve your games, and become a Patreon member today by clicking the link below in the description to join. And a big shout out to my patrons that make all this possible. Alright, so let's get on with it. Number 10 is Entangle. Alright, so Entangle is a first level spell. It is a casting of one action. It has a 90-foot range and a 20-foot cube. This is important to remember. Verbal, and somatic components, and you will have a duration of 1 minute, and it requires concentration, which is bad. And it's School of Conjuration. It is a strength save, which is real bad. And the thing is, it restrains creatures. So, what does it do? Basically, you can make a 20-foot square from the point that within your vicinity, within 90 feet. You can, for the duration, turn these plants, weeds. Technically, you can do this in a dungeon. It just says it sprouts from the ground. So, depends on how your DM wants to roll that. Basically, weeds come up, difficult terrain, and any creature that enters the area or when it is cast is in the area must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained by the entangling plants until the spell ends, or a creature restrained by the plants uses his action to make a strength check against the spell save DC on a success to freeze itself. And when the spell ends, the conjured plants wither away. Now, for a first level spell, it is quite interesting and very decent. So, what does the restraint condition actually mean? Very simply, you can't move. All attacks that you have advantage, and you have disadvantage on every single attack you deal out. You can see that it is very painful for someone that is entangled. It also turns a 20-foot thing into difficult terrain. Okay? And that can slow enemies down and make them into a corridor. Now, the bad. It's a strength saving throw, which means most monsters have ridiculous strength and will be able to break out of it. Creatures can also attempt to break out of it every round, and they can still technically attack you, but just at disadvantage, which is very bad for them. But that's the problem, is creatures can break out of it every turn if they want to, and it's a strength saving throw to even get them in, which means there's a very low chance it will pull it off. And it's against your spell save DC, which, for example, let's say your spell save DC in the early game is like a 13. The enemy has a very high chance of getting a 14 or even a 13 and just straight up beating this thing, and it does nothing to them besides difficult terrain. And that's why it's only number 10. It's very useful in the right situations and very powerful, but the situations are very few, and depending on how your DM rolls it, if you're running in Rocky Mountains and there is no vines, your DM could say it can't work because there is no vines. So that's why it's number 10. Number 9 is Bane. Bane is a first level spell with a casting time of one action, 30-foot range. It has a verbal, somatic, and material components. Also, it requires a drop of blood, so cut your hand. Duration is 1 minute, concentration, School of Enchantment, charisma save, which is quite decent. It is a debuff spell. Okay, so how does this work? Basically, 3 creatures you can see within 30 feet of you must make a charisma saving throw. Whenever a target fails the saving throw, they make every attack roll they make and every saving throw they make is a minus a d4. Now, if you upcast it to level 2, whatever, you can add more creatures to it. It's not really worth it at that point, but, you can do it. Okay, so 1d4 on all attack rolls against on all those creatures, and there is no other save. It's a sucker save. So they're basically for a minute, which is usually the entire round of combat. That's 10 rounds of combat. They're going to have a minus d4 every single attack roll they make. For example, if they have 3 attacks, every single one is going to be minus a d4. If they make a saving throw, it's going to be minus a d4. And it requires your concentration. Okay? Now, this is situationally useful, but in the right situations, it can prove to turn the tide. It is very effective against tough monsters, okay? And what I mean by tough monsters, I mean monsters that have over 60, 70 HP. I would not waste this on goblins. Do not waste this on goblins. Goblins will die when you hit them. Use this on creatures that are very tough. For example, the big bosses or the captains, it is very useful on because minusing their attacks and their saving throws is going to go far more beneficial for your party than it will on goblins or the minions. And it is one of the very few debuffing spells in the actual game that sticks around for a minute. And that is why it's number 9. It is situationally useful because you have to read the right circumstances, but in those right circumstances, it is very powerful. You can take it on a bard, cleric, grave domain, oath of vengeance, and the undead, which is quite a lot actually. Number 8 is Hideous Laughter, or you could also say Tosh's Hideous Laughter if you wanted the D&D term, but Hideous Laughter it is. First level spell, casting time of 1 action, 30-foot range, verbal, somatic, and material components. Duration of 1 minute, requires a concentration. School enchantment, a wisdom save, which is very good. And basically, if you cast this, a creature of your choice you can say within range perceives everything as hilariously funny and falls into a fit of laughter, okay? So, if they fail to save, they fall prone and become incapacitated and cannot stand up for the duration. Okay? A creature with an intelligence less than 4 is unaffected, and at the end of each of its turns, and each time it takes damage, the target can make another wisdom saving throw to do it. The target has advantage if it's triggered by damage, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so for a first level spell, it is very useful. If you're fighting a big baddie, there's a reason this is called a shutdown spell, and can end combat, is if you cast this on a big baddie and he fails, he will drop prone and become incapacitated, which is ridiculous. Prone means you have advantage on all the attacks if you're next to him. Incapacitated means he's literally knocked out, technically. That's what that actually means. And if I'm not mistaken, it means critical damage. But if I'm not, you still have the advantage because he's prone, and he can't do anything. He can't cast spells. He can't do anything, right? Very good. This is not very effective on massive groups. For example, if you're fighting 10 goblins, dropping 1 with a concentration spell is not going to do anything. On big bad E's, this can end the entire combat in your favor, okay, if they fail to save. For example, you're fighting a purple worm or something, and it has more of an intelligence of 4, it will literally fall over and become incapacitated, which means you have a minute, basically, or until it succeeds on this, to do whatever you want. It's very good. It can also knock a big baddie out of combat while you deal with all the minions and then come back to him. The main problem with this spell is that you can technically, if they get hit, they have advantage on the save, which means 25% better chance at them actually saving and getting up. And then your spell's ended. If you don't target them, on the other hand, it's kind of good. But again, can shut down an entire encounter if you really need it. For a first level spell, that's kind of amazing. Not as good as Banishment, but Banishment's a lot higher of a spell. So that's why Hideous Laughter is at 8, or Tasha's Hideous Laughter if you prefer. It's also on the Bard, Wizard, and the Great Old One. Number 7 is Healing Word. It is a first level spell. It is a bonus action. It's very important to remember. 60-foot range, verbal components, like I am speaking to you now, duration of instantaneous, evocation, school, attack save none, healing, and basically what this allows you to do is, at best, you can do a 1d4 plus 5 to anyone you can see within 60 feet of you. You say, Healing Word, baby, and they get up, as long as they're not undead or construct. Now, the reason this is very powerful is, 1, is a bonus action to do that. Okay? To instantly get someone up in the fight. Now, D&D has no rules on going down and getting up, and going down and getting up, and going down and getting up. No rules. The only rule there is that once you go down, at the start of your turn, you roll a death save. This says that if you go down, you roll a death save. You get up, right? All those death saves, when you go back down, are reset. So you can keep doing this. It is the single-handedly the best revive spell in the game because it instantly gets someone up as a bonus action and they can continue the fight. So, for example, let's say you're going. The fighter just went down, he goes after you. You're going to bonus action healing word, so he gets his whole turn up, and you do whatever action. Then you end your turn. He goes, does like 4 attacks, and then he ends his turn. It's a single-handedly the best way to keep your party alive. Someone in the damn party needs healing word, okay? You can take it on a bard, cleric, druid, or alchemist. And alchemist is actually artificer subclass. And it is very good. You reset death save, 60-foot range, best revive spell in the game. Resets death saves, and it's 1d4 plus 5. Not an amazing healing, but for bonus action to get someone up, it is a very good and the best spell in the game to actually get someone up immediately once they go down. They have to not actually be dead. There's a difference between down and dead. Death saves means they're down. Dead means they're dead. That's why it's number 7. Number 6 is Fairy Fire. All right, so it's the first level, casting time of 1 action, 60-foot range, 20-foot cube, verbal components, like I was speaking to you now. Duration is 1 minute, concentration, school of evocation. It's a dex save, which is pretty good. It's a debuff spell. Okay, so I'm going to read this verbatim because it depends a lot on how your DM rules it, and there is no specific ruling on this. Each creature in a 20-foot cube within range and is outlined in blue, green, or violet light, your choice. Any creature in the area when the spell is cast is also outlined in a light if it fails the dexterity saving throw for the duration. Objects and affected creatures shed dim light in 10-foot radiuses. Any attack roll against an affected creature or object has advantage if the attacker can see it, and the affected creature or object can't benefit from being invisible because basically they're a big sparkly tree. Now, what do I mean by it's up to interpretation here? So, you can rule one of the following ways. Your DM can say that the cube is going to be a cube, and every creature in there that made the save is lit up, and once they leave, it ends. The other way you can rule it is that in that 20-foot cube, once they are lit up, even if they move out of the 20-foot cube, they are still lit up. That is how I rule it. That is how some, I will say most, DMs rule it. But that is up to your DM and how he actually wants to rule that. There is no defined definition there. Now, if you do that, it is very good because it's a 1 sucker save, and for a minute, which is a whole combat basically, you have advantage on shooting them, attacking them, casting an attack spell at them, everything has advantage on them. And also, if you're attacking a creature that's invisible, you can pop this on them and you can see them, which is very good. And that's Fairy Fire, baby. I have a very acute affinity to this spell because I played a bard as my first time in D&D, and I took this and I was like, wow, this is a really good spell, boys. And it is. It's very good. One of the best, actually, for gaining advantage. It's also on a bard, druid, artificer, light domain, twilight domain, and archfey. So it is a little hard to get, I will say, unless you're really a bard. But it is definitely well worth it, okay? And that is why it's number 6. Number 5 is Bless, though, because Bless, in my opinion, is better. So, Bless is a first level spell, casting time of 1 action, 30-foot range, verbal, somatic, and material components, duration of 1 minute, and concentration is required. Enchantment, there's no attack save, and it's a buff. Let me read it to you. 3 creatures of your choice, within range of you, get a ability whenever they make an attack roll or saving throw to add a 1d4 to that number. Okay? And when you upcast it, you increase additional creatures. It's not really worth upcasting, though, but it may be in certain situations. Now, 1d4 on all attack rolls means that if your fighter has 4 attacks, or 5 if he's hasting himself, he makes 5 attacks, and each one of those has an additional d4 to increase the chance to hit. That's very good. Now, what is broken, and very, very good, is the saving throws. Let's say it's a dexterity saving throw, and your fighter is not very good at dex for some reason, and he says, oh no, he's blessed though. So he rolls an 8 plus 2 from his mod or something, and it's a 10, and let's say he rolls a d4 and gets a 14 to pass the spell save of 13 or 14. Very good, and you made him just not take the damage or the spell. Very good, okay? And that applies to 3 creatures, and there is no limit on this for the amount of time you can actually do this for a whole minute. Basically, just lasts the entire time. That is very good. Um, One of the bad decides on it is concentration, but it is one of the biggest buffs you can receive in the entire game for attacking and basically saving throws. Probably one of the only buffs. The main problem is it's only on a cleric and a paladin and a life domain cleric. But again, very good spell. Very good spell, especially for buffing your party. Nothing beats this. If you have a cleric that casts on the party, and you have a bard that casts Fairy Fire, you're gonna be doing insane amounts of hitting the enemy. Bard's gonna cast Fairy Fire to light up the enemies for advantage. You give everyone a D4 for their attack rolls and saving throws, and you have a good old time. Okay. This and Fairy Fire are basically your buff spells for the game, and they're very good at level 1s, alright? So, that's why it's number 5. Very good. Number 4 is Absorb Elements. It is a first level spell. It is a reaction. It is a self. It is a somatic component, which means it is 1 round duration, abjuration, no attack save, and it also is technically acid, which is funny, but really acid means everything. Depending on the damage type. So, basically, what happens is, if you are going to be hit by a fireball, and you fail the save, basically, what you can do is wave the Absorb Elements, okay? And then you will have resistance to the triggering damage until the start of your next turn. And when you hit with a melee weapon on the next turn, the target takes an additional 1d6 damage from the triggering type. I have not even used that once. Absorb Elements I've used, I can't even remember to roll the d6, but hey, you might have better memory than me. Anyway, so if you're going to eat a massive amount of damage, example, if Chain Lightning is coming at you and you fail to save, you need to pop this, or you'll take an insane amount of damage, like 30 or 40 damage. You can, let's say, for example, it's going to be 40 damage. You can half it to 20. That is very good. For a first level, very good. And that's why it's number 4. Because if you have a fireball coming at you, you pop it, you're going to take half damage, even if you fail the dex. Okay, you're going to take half. If you pass the dex and pop this, you will take quarter damage, if I'm doing my math correctly. And it is very good. You can take it on Druid, Ranger, surprisingly enough, Sorcerer, Wizard, and Artificer, basically your spell guys. Finally enough, not on a Warlock, because Warlocks are bad, but we'll get to that later. But yes, backline spellcasters and some semi-frontline casters is very good. One of the better spells you can possibly take at first level. That is why it's number 4, because eating half damage on a fireball is very good. Number 3 is going to be Find Familiar, to the surprise of literally no one. Why? Very simple. Let's get into it. First level, 1 hour cast time. If you cast it as a ritual, which you can, which is what the little R means, 1 hour and 10 minutes, has a range of 10 foot, verbal, I'm talking to you, somatic, and material components. And the material components are 10 gold, which you do need to actually pay. Duration is instantaneous, conjuration, attack save down, and it's a summoning spell. Alright, so you can read all of that stuff on the right side of your screen. I'm just going to say it very simply. You summon a familiar that you can control. Think another creature you can control and do whatever you need. You have telepathy with it, and you can speak with it. There is many different familiars you can summon, and some are better than others. I may do a video on that. I may not. If you want me to do a video on that, leave in the comments. Otherwise, there's some guides you can look up there. But basically, you have a creature that you can summon, and it does whatever you want. RP elements, infinitesimal. Okay, because your creature can't actually talk with you. It is a sentient being. It's not just an extension of you. It is a sentient being. Okay, you can't have more than one familiar at a time. Okay. If you cast a spell again, you can actually change out your familiar. That is one thing. And you can also deliver a spell through your familiar as if you had cast a spell. Your familiar must be within 100 feet of you, and you can use its reaction to deliver a spell when you cast it. For example, you're going to do Cure Wounds on that guy over there. You send your familiar. He's going to use his reaction to deliver the spell. Okay? To get your friend up. That is very good because you can technically deliver anything that has a range of self up to a different person because you are touching them, or sorry, a range of touch to anyone that you are touching with the familiar. Okay, and it's very good. Your familiar can also take many different actions. It can dash, it can disengage, it can do basically everything you can. The only exception is it technically can't attack, but some can. I'm not going to get into that, but some can, and they can do it very well. You can scout with your familiar, talk with it, do whatever you want within 100 feet because you have telepathy. You can also make it take the help action in combat, which gives you advantage on one attack against a creature that you're fighting. In combat, the enemy can also get finally annoyed enough with your familiar, and it will swipe at the familiar and technically kill it, but you'll resummon it. At least that's how I roll it as a DM, but it's up to you on how you want to do that. But basically, they'll kill the familiar. But they wasted an attack doing that, which means your familiar bought you time, which very good for a first level spell. But the RP elements and the utility of a Find Familiar is bar none in the game, in my opinion. You can send your familiar to go spy on someone if you really want to. You can be like, hey, buddy, you're going to go over there and check the bank man and follow him home and tell him what he does. Raven will go over there and report back to you whenever he's finished and tell you telepathy, or you can talk to it, or you do whatever. And they'll tell you. And you didn't have to do anything. It's great. It's fantastic. You can make it a spider and throw it up on a wall and have it go in a bank and waddle around and take, notes and stuff for whatever. There are so many things you can do with Find Familiar. That's why it's number 3. It's kind of the best RP spell, in my opinion, on the side, but hey, what do I know? The one downside is it's only available for wizards, and that is why when you take Ritual Caster, most people take Find Familiar as a ritual, because that is the best first level spell that you're going to get that's only specific to the wizard, okay? That's why people take it. Very good. That's why it's number 3. Number 2 is Silvery Barbs. Alright, so let's get to the most controversial spell possibly in D&D right now. In Strixhaven, they introduced a new spell. It's called Silvery Barbs. I'll read it to you and you can see how broken it is. At first level, as a reaction, it has 60-foot range, verbal, duration instantaneous, enchantment, no attack save, and it's technically a buff spell. Also, the asterisk on the casting time is which you take when a creature you can see within 60 feet successfully saved on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. What this allows you to do is you make a creature within 60 feet reroll a d20 on an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw. And after that, the chosen creature you can choose a different creature, example, your friend. They have advantage on the next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw it makes it within the next minute. Okay, so, in my opinion as a DM, it's not that bad. If you're playing low-level D&D, this is horrible. So, for example, a tag team combo of a wizard and a sorcerer, because a bard, sorcerer, and wizard can take this spell. An example of this. The wizard is over, okay? The wizard's turn is over. The sorcerer is now going up. The sorcerer is now going to cast Fireball at the damn monster. Okay, the monster rolls a saving throw. He succeeds. He's going to take half damage. You say, as the wizard, no, reroll that, DM. I'm using Silvery Barbs. Then the monster rolls a saving throw, fails, and will eat the entirety of the damage from a fireball from the sorcerer. And you then are going to give the advantage to your fighter for a saving throw or an attack roll or an ability check for a minute, which is basically most combats. You can see what is broken. And it just is. If you're playing at high tiers, this isn't that bad. Depending on legendary resistances and just being immune to first level spells. But at low levels, when the big baddies only have like 50, 60 health, and you make them reroll, and they fail their saving throw, and like fall unconscious, or they fall to Hideous Laughter, or whatever, it can be devastatingly bad. And as a first level, for the ability to reroll, it is bar none. For the ability to debuff somebody, it is bar none the best spell in the game. For the as if it was just that, it would be an okay spell, but it also gives you advantage on the saving throw for a minute, on anyone, or an attack roll, or an ability check. Broken. Okay. In my opinion, not that broken at high tiers. At low tiers, I can see it being very broken. So that's why it's number 2, and the most controversial spell in D&D right now. And number 1, you know it, you love it, Shield. Number 1, first level spell slot. Reaction time is the casting time. Sorry, is 1 reaction in which you take a hit or hit by an attack targeted by the magic missile spell. It has a range of self, verbal, and somatic components. Duration of 1 round, abjuration, no attack save, and it is a warding spell. You can take it on a sorcerer, wizard, hexblade, artillerist, and battlesmith, which are both artificers. So, yeah, let me just read the description to you. An invisible barrier of magical force appears and protects you. Until the start of your next turn, you have plus 5 AC, including against a triggering attack, and you take no damage from magic missile. This spell, single-handedly, is the best first-level spell in D&D you will ever get. Having a plus 5 AC is ridiculous. It's ridiculously good. So, if you're a frontline fighter, and you have Eldritch Knight, for example, you can pop this. For example, if you have a shield and plate armor, just plate and shield, 20 AC, and you have a fighting style for another 1 AC, so now you're at 21 for defense, you can then pop this if you got hit or are getting hit to potentially make that attack miss. So now your AC is 26 until the start of your next turn. Okay? So, if you're a frontline fighter and you are fighting multiple enemies that are coming in at you and you get hit, you say, well, there's about 12 attacks coming in at me. I'm going to pop shield and make a lot of them miss. You can turn from getting hit by 80% of the attacks into getting hit by only 30 to 40% of them. So in this example, 12 attacks are going to come in. The fighter has 21 AC. He says, nope, I'm not dealing with this. Pop shield has 26 AC. Most of the attacks miss. And the ones that get through, they get through, right? But you reduce your damage immensely, okay? And it works on every single attack against you, okay? Range, melee, spell attack rolls against you all have to break your AC. And this spell can single-handedly save your character's life. I've seen it happen multiple times where this spell alone saves someone's life to get them out of danger. For example, fighter is on the front line and he's going to get hit by 12 attacks. He's going to pop shield. He's going to cast... He casted Absorb or Blade Ward as a cantrip. Then he's going to pop this at the end of his turn. He's going to take half damage from every attack that actually gets through. He's going to pop this to make sure that the attacks that do get through are very minimal. He got hit a few times, took half damage, and then you can Vortex Warp him out as a artificer or whatever, wizard that can do it, okay? Teleport him 90 feet back to you and get him out of there. And that's why shield's number 1. It's good on any class. Sorcerer, wizard, hexblade, artillerist, battlesmith, anyone that can take shield is good. Sorcerer, if you get flanked by an enemy and you have terrible AC, you can bump your AC up from 12 to 17, and this could save your life. Wizard the same way, works well on any single character. This is the best defensive spell you're ever going to get. And that's why I take it on every single character that can take shield, has shield in my opinion. You should always take it, and that's why it's number 1, alright? So that's the end of the first level spells, the end of the top 10 first level spells in D&D in my opinion, obviously. If you like the video, go ahead and leave a like. Otherwise, on your screen right now should be a video to take you back to the top 10 best combat cantrips, in my opinion. Also should be a link to my Patreon if you would like to check that out. Otherwise, I will see you people later, where we will continue this series and go to second level spells.